Hello, welcome everybody. Hello to everybody that's joining us. Thank you for joining us today, looking at using maths to improve lives, which sounds very grand, but it's very real. So just wanted to say hello. You can see a few of us on the screen. So I'm Rachel, and I work for the AMSP. I'm their careers lead, and today it's a joint event from the AMSP and Maths for Girls. So you might have been to some of the Maths for Girls role model panel events before. And also you can see Lucy, who's with us today, and Katie. They have two very different jobs, but you will see how they, you will hear from them, and you'll see how they both do what the title says, improving people's lives, and they're going to tell us about how maths is key to helping them do that. So I'll stop sharing my screen so that you can see faces a little bit better. Okay, so we're a little bit bigger now, hopefully. And yeah, so both AMSP and Maths for Girls are really keen, organisations that are really keen to encourage young people, so that's you, to think about how important maths could be in your future career and give you some examples of jobs that you might do when you leave school. So we're going to hear from our fabulous role models, Lucy and Katie today. And we did have another role model, Camilla, with us, but she works in medical research. In fact, she's looking at cures for cancer, and they've done very well in their laboratory today. So exciting is their work that she can't leave us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you, just to start us off, I'm going to share with you a video that we have on our AMSP website from our World of Work collection, and that is about Sarah. And Sarah is an orthotist. Now, maybe you don't know what that is, but that's fine. We're going to find out. So just a short video, and we're going to, so this will be our first job about how maths helps you in your career to improve people's lives.
I'm the most squeamish person in the world, so there was no way I could become a doctor, but I've always wanted to use my maths to help people. I'm Sarah, and I'm a researcher and an orthotist. I've also trained as a prosthetist as well. Prosthetists create and fit artificial replacements for patients who are missing a limb. Orthotists straighten and support different parts of the body using medical devices, things such as ankle braces, wrist supports, spinal braces, and even helmets. Just like an orthodontist would straighten your teeth, ortho means to straighten, and so we straighten any other parts of the body. One day a week I work in the hospital, and the rest of the time I do research. When I'm working in the hospital, a patient will come in and present with a problem that we need to work out how to fix. I'll ask them about their problem and see how we can improve it. I'll ask them what activities they get up to and the things that they do in everyday life so that we can make sure that we design something that works for them. Once the device is ready, I'll fit it to the patient, and then I'll get them in to review and monitor them to make sure that it's actually working for what we want it to do. I love working with individual patients, but I also wanted to do research so I could help a wider number of people too. When I was 13, I started working as a swimming assistant. And once I was old enough during my A-levels, I trained to become a full swimming teacher. The school I worked at specialised in supporting disabled children learning to swim. A lot of these children used a wide range of different medical devices, like the ones that I work with today. It was then that I realised that a lot of the problem-solving skills and the skills that I've learned in maths and physics could be used to develop and improve these devices. I chose art, textiles and PE at GCSE as my options. They really helped me to deal with my stress and anxiety during my studies. Actually, a lot of what I learned in art and textiles helps me with the problem solving, planning and design elements of my job now. For A-levels, I took maths, further maths, chemistry and physics. No one in my family has a background in STEM at all, and I was the first generation to go to university. After A-levels, I studied physics at university. For For a career, I thought you just had to do something you were good at. So I thought I'd end up working in a bank or an insurance firm, seeing as I'm good at maths and science. But during my degree, it was the 2012 London Olympics and Paralympics, which I actually had a chance to go visit. It was really inspiring, and I got to see a whole range of medical devices being used. And I thought, I could do that, I could make those. When I went to the interview for my P&O degree, it was based on personality and not just academic background. They want to see if you can interact with the patients. Patients can feel quite vulnerable, so you need to have good empathy and also good communication skills so that you can explain the devices and treatments to the patients. I didn't have A-level biology, and I hadn't done it since GCSE. I thought I'd need it to do the job, but they said, no, you don't need it. We can teach you that. It's the math skills you need. Things like problem solving, being methodical, logical, and analysing. Maths underpins all the devices that we give and every prescription. I definitely didn't find maths easy all the time. Although it looks like it comes naturally to me, I have to work really hard at it. Some people just seem to get it, but I need lots of practice. I use so much of the maths that I learnt at school in my job, particularly the mechanics that I learnt at A-level. Mechanics is at the core of everything I do, from angles, forces, people's centres of gravity and planes of view in my everyday work. I also use statistics, which I never thought I would, analysing people's movements and strengths, comparing one side of the body to the other. One particular example is scoliosis bracing, which is a curvature of the spine. In scoliosis bracing, you work out the Cobb angle, which is the angle of curvature of the spine seen in the frontal plane. For this, you need to look at an X-ray and work out where the curve starts and where the curve ends in the spine. You can do this using simple geometry and angle properties to help determine what the Cobb angle is. Next, you would either hand plasticast or 3D scan the spine. You need to place opposing forces either side of the spine where the curve is to stop it progressing any further. These have got to be at the right amount, and you've got to also wear the brace for 23 hours a day. So you need to make sure that it's comfortable for the patient. Any problems with the maths here can have a detrimental effect on the patient's life. I've managed to pursue what I really enjoyed in school: sports, arts, creating design, and maths, and putting them all together to help people. And I really enjoy my job. What I do is kind of maths in action, and it makes a difference to people's lives.
So there we go. That's not a real life person. Well, she's real life. We haven't got her here today to ask questions of, but we do have Katie and Lucy here with us today. So if you've got any questions about Sarah's work, then I think I can answer some of those. But really what we want is, as Katie and Lucy are speaking, for you to put your questions into the chat. And then after they've spoken, then I'll ask those questions for you. But hopefully you like that video of Sarah. And so if, for example, you were thinking, maybe I would like to go into health, that's certainly one way you can improve people's lives, but you didn't want to be a doctor, then being an orthotist, that's just one example. And if you want to see more examples, then on our World of Work page, we've got lots of other videos as well. But now the exciting bit, so we get to hear in real life, in real time, from our panelists. So we'll start with Lucy, if that's okay. Thank you both so much, but thank you, Lucy, for coming with us, coming to speak to us today. I know that you work at Novartis, which oncology, and that you're the head of digital and business excellence, but I'm not really sure what that means. So if you're listening in and you don't know what that means, don't worry, because Lucy is going to tell us. And yeah, don't forget to put your questions in the chat. Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you. Great to be here today. And I guess there's two parts to what I do. There's what is Novartis. It's probably not a company that most people have heard of. We're a big pharmaceutical company, and we manufacture medicines and for lots of conditions across heart failure, respiratory, asthma, rheumatology, which is kind of joint conditions, and arthritis. But specifically, I work in oncology, which is medicines for cancer. And so it's a really purpose-driven field of work, because obviously everything that we do is to improve patients' lives. And my team, my job is head of digital and business excellence within that. So I have a team of 16 people at Novartis, and basically we have a couple of different roles within the business. Firstly, we look at how we can use digital marketing, which again you don't necessarily think maths when you hear marketing, but 100% maths is what underpins everything we do in marketing, and particularly in digital. And then we also provide digital health solutions, so companion apps and AI algorithms, things that can be used to improve the lives of patients who are either on our medicines or maybe are about to be diagnosed, and digital means to be able to support them as well. And all of those systems and apps and processes use maths to, again, underpin the way that they work. And then we also have a role in maths, pure maths, in terms of analytics. So one of the really important things that we have to do as a business is predict how many patients we think are going to need treatment, because obviously we work across the whole world, and these medicines that we specifically provide for cancer are really, really specialised, and sometimes there might only be 1 or 2 patients a year who take some of the medicines. They're that specialised, and sometimes even they're manufactured specifically for those individual patients. And so it's really important that we're able to have a really good understanding of how many people in the UK specifically are likely to need those medicines, how much we have in our warehouse in the UK, and then how much we need to bring in and when. And that's all really based on maths. So that's a quick summary of my team. In terms of my maths journey, so was really inspiring to listen to the previous video. Actually, I kind of was similar until A level. So I took all of the maths and science GCSEs, as we all do, and then went on to A levels and did all of the sciences. So I did maths, physics, chemistry, biology, and really enjoyed all of them, but then went to university and specialised in molecular biology. But as part of that, again, really, really had a huge component of maths. So there was a whole modules and from all of my years of university that were based on statistics specifically, and actually really resonated with me around mechanics in maths, because all of that thinking around what's the rate of change and what's the angle of something actually is what influences our day-to-day lives. So I use that in my job, but I also use those things in my day-to-day life, and when you realize that, it's a bit of a light bulb moment just how important maths is actually. And my fundamental belief, I have two sons actually, I really encourage them to continue with maths, because I just really believe the better you are at maths and the longer you can stay with it, and the more detailed understanding you have, the better you'll be just at everything really, and particularly in these areas of work and healthcare, which is becoming much more digital and much more driven by data, and just being able to have a really good grasp of maths is really critical to that for the future. You're on mute, Rachel.
I was on mute so that I didn't, interrupt you or say anything wrong. But then, of course, I try to speak and I can't. One thing I thought was really interesting was how you talked about AI, because maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I think of AI, perhaps more in sort of like perhaps gaming or stuff like that. But health, which is a personal sort of career, is also a technological career as well. So that was really interesting. And in your team, you have so many different jobs as well. Like, thinking, you've got to predict how many of a medicine is going to be needed, and how the marketing is involved with maths. There's so much for people to go away and look up, I think, after this. Yeah. So that's fabulous, Lucy. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions for you. And then, Katie, you have a job which I'd never really heard of. Well, I'd heard of part of the title, right, but not the first word. So you're a health architect. Is that right?
I'm a healthcare. Yeah, I work principally in healthcare.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So it's probably about buildings, but perhaps you can tell us a bit more. Yeah, you carry on.
Sure. I've got a little presentation. Can I share it?
Oh yes, please do. That's fine.
Okay.
Have we given you permission? I'm sure we have.
I hope
to do
so.
that.
Let me see.
But whilst Katie's doing that, just a reminder, if you've got any questions for Lucy about, like, I think I'm quite interested in this whole AI thing, but if you've got any questions, then please do put them in the chat and we'll ask them later on. That's it, Katie. Yes.
Lovely.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Katie Oliver, and I'm a registered and chartered architect in the UK. I work for a global architecture practice, which I'm currently sitting in, known as BDP in Manchester. This is the building that I work in, and this is the environment that I work in, a very open plan office, everybody sort of collaborating around desks and working on computers. But I've also worked in some really incredible places. I've worked in a listed barn in Manchester. I worked in a Georgian townhouse in London, and I've worked for the Queen's University of Belfast. So most people think of architects that design luxury homes, something like this. I'm standing around all day around my drawing board and drawing up concrete spectacles, but no, I work mainly in healthcare for the NHS. This means that I design hospitals and clinical facilities. I can also design labs and cancer treatment centres. It's a very, very rewarding and absolutely fascinating job. Bit of background, it took me 8 years of university training to become an architect. Long time, but absolutely very exciting, very interesting. I think I would recommend anyone that you're not in university the whole time. You do have periods of time out where you get to have a job and then you go back to university, and it's a very diverse and interesting career path. At school, for my A levels, I did art, math, and French, which is sort of reflected in what I did for my GCSEs. When I went to university, I used my art skills by representing my ideas through sketching and painting and model making. And these are some examples of my university work, where everybody thinks architecture is just sort of plans and sections, but it can be really colorful, it can be really interesting and really collaborative, and you can meet some really interesting people, all with their own different styles. And obviously I use my math skills when doing, like, working out building plans and sections. So this is an example of a hospital that I worked on in London, where we needed to renovate the existing building and retrofit it for essentially a modern hospital. So we needed to pull off the back facade. We needed to refill the entire hospital with brand new floors, brand new walls, brand new ceilings, and then fitted out the theatres, fit out all the different MRI and CT scanner and suites and everything. And then put the back facade back on again. So as you can see, very technical, very detailed, but also really interesting. Another example of a cancer research centre we did in London called proton beam therapy, which is actually just finished about a month ago. It started about 10 years ago. I worked on it for about 4 years. And cancer patients are treated here by the NHS in these sort of large chambers you can see in the bottom of the basement, and that basement is the same size if you put it on its side, the Royal Albert Hall. So that's how big this facility is underneath the ground. It's a bit of an iceberg. So again, there's lots of collaboration. This is like a 3D model, kind of if you're playing The Sims, but completely next level. And we collaborate with engineers and people who do like the mechanics and the plumbing to be able to pull all this together, because it cannot just be done by one person. It's a huge team behind this. So it houses all the equipment, the treatment rooms for the staff and the patients. So today I'm actually still working on a mental health facility in Birmingham. So it's not just high tech, it can also be the softer sort of refurb, restoration of existing buildings. So to do that, I need mental maths, calculating distances, heights, levels, areas. People need to know gross internal areas, which kind of need to be worked out quite quickly, and looking at different measurements using grid lines. So having that huge sort of math background really, really helps me with that. It makes sketching really accurate. It makes conversations with builders and developers much easier. We also create visuals like this using 3D modeling, which can give the client an idea of what the building's going to look like, but also gives it a scale and proportion for, say, like a planner for building control, for people to see what the building's actually going to look like. Yeah, that's the end of my presentation. I'm going to stop sharing.
Well, that is amazing. That is absolutely fascinating there, Katie, that you get involved in all those sorts of things. So the maths that you use then, do you have to have A-level maths, do you think, to be an architect?
Excuse me, I wouldn't have said you would have to use you would have to have A-level maths, I think it would help a lot. I mean, I did maths and then went the completely opposite direction with art and French. So I think the trio kind of all work together. I also did little known, I did further maths
Oh.
alongside that, but only until AS level. I stopped it after the first year because I didn't think I would need all the sort of extra level and extra layer of statistics and analytics that the further maths gave me. So no, I would say a basic level of GCSE mathematics would suffice for entry into architecture school, but for your own benefit and for your future career, I definitely think maths at A level would be very useful.
Cool. Well, I'm going to wait for some more questions. We've got a few come into the chat, but I'm just, whilst you mentioned there, Katie, that you did maths A level and that you did further maths A level. I'm just going to show this, this slide here, just to remind students. I'm not quite sure of your ages that are here. Some of you might be in year 7, but some of you might be in year 9 or year 10 and might be thinking ahead to after your GCSEs. Just to say that there are actually 3 different maths pathways that you can take. You've probably heard of A-level maths. It's actually the most popular of all A-levels, and 95,000 students a year take that A-level. And so you would do maths like you've been doing at GCSE, but a bit more of it. You do some more statistics, and something that actually that Sarah mentioned on the video and Lucy mentioned as well, a part of maths called mechanics, and that's about understanding the world, how that works in terms of the physical world. So it's a bit like some of the maths that you do in physics. And then further maths, which isn't just maths with harder sums, but you do get to look at other areas of maths as well. So you get to look at discrete or decision maths, which can help you. One way, if we're linking it to improving lives, and also this might be to do with the AI as well that Lucy mentioned. It's things like matching patients with organ donors and things like that. So it's the maths of computing, a lot of that is, and complex numbers and all sorts of really interesting but different types of maths as well. And then level 3 core maths is quite a new option, and that's for students who want to do a bit more maths, but they maybe think that they don't just want to do maths or science, but they want to use maths in other ways to support other subjects like biology, psychology, sports science. But the reason that core maths exists is because it's understanding the world around you, the world of work in particular, the sort of maths you would use in the world of work, and also the maths of real life. Like Lucy said, some of the maths skills that she has really help her just in her daily life. So those are the different options that are available to you. And core maths you can study alongside subjects if you would want to do BTECs or T levels, or even if you're on an apprenticeship, that's the sort of maths that you can do alongside with that. Right, okay, so let's get on to the questions because we've got a few in the chat and I've got a few others as well here. So what skills, we'll ask Lucy first, but this is for both of you. What skills do you think will be needed in the future in your jobs? Do you think there's anything that you'd need to study or train for in particular to keep up to date with your knowledge?
Yeah, it's a great question, and definitely I've been in this industry for quite a while now, and definitely have had to keep pace with particularly the analytics side of maths and the systems that go around that. So when I was at university, we would use Excel for the most part for things, and then now it's really much more advanced than that. So things like Python and R, which are computing methodologies to be able to run really sophisticated analytics on everything that we do really, and using big amounts of data to come down to really discrete small decisions using computing. So I guess a couple of things: computer science, and also analytics, and merging the two together, and that continues to change really quickly. So actually keeping on top of that requires doing some courses and some training and learning alongside doing our job, and actually learning by doing as well. And again, I really support people trying to learn those skills now really for their futures, because I can only see that we're going to need that more, not less.
It's good that you said Python, Lucy, because in schools there is an opportunity, to do that. I mean, they might not use it in the way that you do, maybe to make a game or that sort of thing, but it's transferable, and it's a really good skill to have. So it's good to know that's useful as well. Katie, how about yourself?
I would say that, especially because I'm maybe only 5 years into my career now, that there are lots of senior members of staff who are struggling to keep up with the more computer sided aspect of the architecture profession. Like, you probably imagine architects standing at drawing boards, like it's very old, and there are a few architects still out there who do work and can successfully have a career like that. But the future of the architecture profession, I do think is very computer based, and even myself, I will have to keep up with that sort of training and in computer software. And sometimes even now there's students coming out of university that know a little bit more than I do and different softwares than I do. But I do think there's two sides to being an architect that isn't just software. It's the human side, and it's the be able to talk to clients. It's the software side that can engage with people. So I think that'll never go away. That'll always sort of be a constant. Whereas I think the computer and the software will always update. And
Yeah.
those are skills that you'll have to hone as you get further on in your career.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah. So my daughter, she's just finished her A levels. She did maths, biology, and art. And so, yeah, we were looking for careers. Well, she was looking for courses at university actually that might combine those subjects. And she did look at architecture, and there were some courses that were called digital architecture. So they were very heavily computer based. And anyway, she's decided on product and furniture design, but it's a
Ooh.
course that she might be able to swap after the first year into interior design. And I
Oh,
know
lovely.
so you work with a lot of interior designers, don't you,
Yeah,
in
so
architecture?
my
Yeah.
practice is multidisciplinary. So on this floor, we have interior designers, we have architecture students and practitioners, we have
Hmm.
mechanics and structures and all different floors. So I can sort of move up and down between them all, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so thinking about how you got into, not necessarily got into your career, but as you were growing up, what sort of hobbies or clubs or interests did you get involved in at school? Um, if you can remember, maybe you're still involved in those hobbies and clubs, and I expect they helped you as well, haven't they, with your career as well? So, Lucy, can we start with you? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, it has probably changed for me. So I actually didn't have particularly sciencey or maths hobbies, but I really enjoyed the academic side of things at school, and really loved learning and loved being at university and everything. But actually, for my hobbies, I tended to do more just recreational things. So played in a netball team. I love swimming, and also I still sing in a choir, and I've sung in a choir since I was like year 7, I think, at secondary school. I'm not necessarily going to ever be able to use that as my career, sadly, but I just really enjoy singing, and it's just, I guess, the more creative side, whereas
Mhm.
at the time I'm using a more logical side of my brain.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Actually, those two of those are my hobbies, netball and singing. Katie, how about yourself?
I was super into painting and cutting up magazines and making sketchbooks, and I don't know, going around and ordering everyone in my family to help me out. Um, I Yeah, they kind of fell away whenever I got into sort of art at school and then went on into university, and it became what I love doing, just became my main thing. I do think though that sports definitely, I took up rowing at university and I still do it now. I think you need like a side thing from your main passion to keep you engaged. I think like long nights at university, you can do all-nighters, and you need some sort of like structure and regular exercise. So definitely, yeah. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking of my all-nighters, sorry.
Well, you can reminisce there. That's fine. But we've got a maths question for you. But about it's from a student about can you get better in maths? Well, I think that's a question. Can you get better in maths? And what tips do you have for improving?
For
Go ahead, Katie. Yeah, your mic's on. You go ahead.
um, improving in maths, I really struggled. I remember in primary, it's different, I think, in England. Primary 6, I think, with fractions. I just couldn't get my head around them. I was like, Mom, I need some help. And we got a little tutor on. And I remember sitting in my little tutor group, feeling really nervous, like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough to do maths. And I think you just have to have somebody explain it to you in the way that you can connect with it. Everybody learns differently. And I think the way my teacher was teaching me, it wasn't clicking. And as soon as somebody else said, actually, maybe learn it this way, it was like, yes, I understand it now. So I definitely think find different ways of learning maths. It's not just about sort of looking at the board. There's other ways, and everybody has their own little way of pulling something apart and putting it back together and understanding it.
Yeah, totally agree with that, Lucy.
Yeah, totally agree. Actually, another part of my big job is we run the training department for the company. So absolutely, the different learning styles is something that we apply in our business as well. And I know, you know, some people love like being on teams and learning that way. Some people actually are much more hands-on and practical. Some people just want to kind of digest a book and write things out and scribble things out. And I totally agree. Finding your own way that things work for you is really important. And I guess with maths, it sometimes feels like you've just got to learn what's in front of you because it's quite a logical subject, but you can still apply your own learning style to that. And what always worked really well for me was in all of my subjects actually was just breaking them down into small chunks and not trying to attack the whole thing, but just really just trying to take small discrete chunks one piece at a time and applying it to something practical. Again, that's I think why the blend of statistics and biology really helped me, because I could see how the maths was helping to understand the biology, and it all fit together really nicely.
Yeah, that's some really good advice there. And yeah, it's absolutely true that, well, some people think, don't they? I've heard this said that, you know, you can either do maths or you can't, but that's not true. It's like everything, like with your singing or swimming or playing netball, you get better with practice. That's absolutely true. So yeah, thanks for sharing your tips there. And the other thing I like that you said was that it's when it's attached, like you said, for you with the biology, when the statistics was attached with the biology, it sort of made more sense to you. So so that's really good, yes, to have it attached to something that you're interested in and that kind of thing. Brilliant. So whilst we're still on the topic of maths, is there any maths that you use in your job sort of on a regular basis that you can remember, that's maths that I learned at school? Can you so is there any maths from school that you sort of use in your job on quite a regular basis, do you think?
I think that without knowing it, we probably do. We use particularly quite a lot of GCSE maths. Like we
Yep.
use, there's a lot of that kind of predicting that I talked about is a rate of change, and all of the kind of the Pythagoras and the triangle, and what we're actually trying to do is work out one side of a triangle, even though we don't realize that at the time. What we're actually trying to figure out is what's the missing piece. What do we think that number is going to be based on all the other information we have? But once you get into kind of your job, you don't necessarily think, oh, I need to go and find the equation, because you know that, and you know how that might work, and you apply that principle, but actually you are using the principles that you've learned at school.
Yeah, cool. Katie, is there any maths you use perhaps from GCSE or something?
I think so. Yeah, I think every day I'm working with shapes and areas and floor plans. So even today, my notebook is full of just doodles of working out stairs and working out geometries of things. So I'd need to be like, how do I get the area of a trapezium really quickly? Oh yeah, I know that I know that little that calculation so quickly. Whereas I think if you don't know that kind of thing, if I'm looking at an odd shape and I'm like, how do I work out the area of that? Oh wait, I have to Google it or look it up. But I don't know. As Lucy said, you just kind of know from sort of repetition from doing it at GCSE or A level, or as well percentages of things, fractions, yeah, all those kinds of like things that assist me with multiples and calculations and areas and yeah.
Well, that's brilliant, and that's great for any teachers that are listening in, and they can say, right, I've got an application to find the area of a trapezium because I need that if I'm an architect, and I've used it in my design. So that's fantastic. Yeah. So moving on to thinking about the fact that you're both women, are there lots of other women in your company, Lucy, and how diverse is the employee group?
Yeah, great question. Actually, Novartis specifically is a really diverse place to work. We have a lovely big head office in London, and from all aspects of life, we have representation of every group. And specifically, the female ratio in the leadership team is over 50%, so that's a great indicator. And then we have lots of women in my team. I think of 16, I actually have an imbalance in terms of we have less men than women. So yeah, lots of women. And part of our recruitment policy is we recruit diverse pools. So when we're interviewing people, if we don't feel that the candidates we have represent a diverse pool, whether it's gender or anything else, then we just keep looking until we have a really diverse panel of people to select from. So it's very important to us. Yeah,
that's great. Yeah. And how about in your world, Katie?
I think it's interesting that because architecture is such a long university career, that a lot of women, especially the people that I started out with, tend to drop out and go into interior design or go into anything else, set design, just so they can kind of get on with their lives. I think 7 or 8 years, possibly 9. I know some people have been training for like 10 years. It sort of puts people off, but especially in my office and in lots of offices that my friends work in, they are quite diverse. Whenever it gets to more senior levels of staff, it does start to tip a little bit. There are a lot more male members of staff that are directors and partners and things. But I think that's starting to tip. You know what I mean? Maybe 20 years ago it was a completely different story. You know, the women were the assistants, where it's completely the other way around. And it's starting to get better. So yeah, I think it's something that's just constantly gradually building and building, and even the senior members of staff are trying to work on as well. But yeah, I hope that was honest. I didn't want to sort of gloss over it. It's the reality
Yeah.
of being the predominantly male profession for a long time.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Thank you for sharing that, Katie. And a question from a student, which actually is just like the one I wanted to ask as well, is it says, how did you find out about the company that you work for now, and why did you want to work for them? Lucy, yeah.
For me, I was trying to think about it actually, and I guess because I've worked in this industry for quite a while, it was more about when I left university, I was thinking, how can I use my degree? And I was at the careers office in my university, and healthcare manufacturers is a really key recruiter of people with biology type degrees. So I really found out about the industry first, and then once you start working in the industry, you start to realize who the really big companies are and where the successful companies are and what the names are. Particularly when maybe health architecture and pharmaceuticals aren't necessarily everyday kind of companies that everyone would know.
That's right.
So it's once you're in that industry, once you find out about the industry, and then you start to figure out, well, what are the big companies and that kind of thing. We do have professional associations. So the ABPI is the Association of the British Pharmaceutical Industry, and they actually have a really great careers section. So you can look on there, and they name some of the big companies that you can work for as well.
So really you started by speaking to a careers advisor or looking on careers web pages is maybe what we might do now, and that. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. And yeah. So Katie, I'm going to change it then. So 2 questions: what turned you on to architecture, and then how did you find out about the company that you work for now?
What got me interested in architecture? I really liked doing art at school and at home whenever I was a kid, and then I really enjoyed maths and science and physics, and I didn't want to give either up whenever I got to a careers meeting. And I remember it was, architecture came the natural choice. I really enjoyed buildings. I really loved travel, and I really loved looking at urban environments and dense cities and exploring. And it just became, as I said, it became a very natural choice for me. And the company that I work for at the moment, I've worked for quite a few companies, and I think that's a sort of natural thing as an architect. You start to move around and follow projects around that you really want to be involved in. So I was actually sort of headhunted for this job in that they needed healthcare architects to work on a series of large national hospitals that they wanted to build across the country. And I had heard about them before. They were very well known in the healthcare scene, and they were very prestigious, and they had a really incredible multidisciplinary offering, which for me is the architects, engineers, all the different consultants working under one roof and consulting with another. So yeah, that was really interesting. And you'll find the sort of broad spectrum from where I'm working back to the sort of lone architect sitting at home in their own, working on their own projects, to this massive scale of a massive group of people being able to build and design and deliver these huge projects.
Yeah, so teams are very important in both of your fields of work then. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and another question from a student, which is, do you get to travel much in your job, Katie?
Well, travel within the UK to different sites. So you get to go to site visits, or you need to go on site visits to see how the building work is progressing. You can work anywhere, I think, as well as an architect. You can, as long as you know the ropes, you can move to anywhere where they speak the language that you speak. So yeah, I can travel a lot if I want to, and I think travel as well has changed for me since becoming an architect, because you start to look at the places you visit differently and you start to question the world differently, which is a really nice thing to learn at university.
That is very interesting. Yeah. How about you, Lucy, in your role?
Yeah, it made me chuckle because I used to do a lot of travel in my roles. I've been to kind of the company offices and head offices all over Europe and America over the years. But obviously COVID then really stopped a lot of international travel for a long time, and we haven't gone back to it yet, which is, it's a shame in that you don't necessarily get to go on the trips to different places. But actually what it means is we have these amazing technologies like Teams that mean I can talk to a colleague in New York or Italy like almost instantaneously. And so the need for us to actually physically all get on a plane and go and meet together to workshop on something isn't the same as it used to be. And we have a really clear direction as a company to try and minimize the impact on the environment wherever possible. So we've really actually tried to minimize international travel, which might be a bit of a shame if that's what you do, but actually it's expanded how we work, and we've got loads of really cool digital ways that we can interact with each other and work collaboratively online now, versus actually just having to get together in a room. We do have a really good policy, and I know lots of companies are doing this as well, that we don't have to physically be in the office every day. We can work from home, but also if we're away somewhere, we have got the option to work anywhere for a month every year. So again, through digital, we could go to Spain and work there for a month if we wanted to. So you have to pay for yourself to go, but it's an option, which is great, and has changed in the last few years.
Yeah. So there's just that, you like you say, so the pandemic has meant that we do things differently, and some of those changes are good changes, aren't they, especially for the environment and things like that. So a final quick question, so think back to when you were a teenager. Do you have a piece of advice for yourself, something you'd wish you'd known then, that you can share with us, perhaps Lucy or whoever's first?
Oh yeah, I wish I'd known just how important maths and digital was going to be. I think it sounds really obvious now, but yeah, I wish actually if I went back, I love what I do and I love my area of work, but computer science, advanced maths, all of those things I just think are super interesting, and I could have definitely seen myself going down that path had I been maybe like a generation later at university. So yeah, I guess the advice is just keep with it, because it's going to be really important to you, even though it can sometimes feel you're not sure where it's going, or is it important. It's actually having a really good understanding of these subjects will make you much more successful in the future.
Thanks. Katie?
I would almost echo what you just said, Lucy, because my younger brother decided to go and do computer science, and now he works in San Francisco for Facebook. You know what I mean? Like the places you can go with this level of engagement with maths and digital technology. Yeah. What else would I tell myself? I would have confidence in myself. Like that thing you think you can't do, you can do it. You know what I mean? And I think that's the biggest thing that I wish I told myself when I was 17 or 18, or have confidence in yourself and your abilities.
That's brilliant advice. I want to thank you both ever so much. I'm sure that people have got so much food for thought, and I just wanted to echo everything that you said, but also to think that if you don't know what you want to do when you finish school, that is totally normal. So just explore is what I would say to you. Find out as much as you can. So hopefully you've heard lots of good advice today. Perhaps you've discovered a couple of jobs that you hadn't thought of before, and you've got some inspiration and ideas that you can go and follow up. And as hopefully you've also learned how the skills that you develop from studying maths are key in actually lots of different jobs that are going to be available to you. So if we could, I'm sure we'd all give you a round of applause. I really thank you, Katie and Lucy, for giving up your time today. And if you have got any further questions, then you might be able to find some answers on the either our website, the AMSP, or the Maths for Girls website. If you're a student, things to look for would be our World of Work collection or our student literature, which talks about the different maths qualifications and lots of different careers that you can go into. And also in the news section on the Maths for Girls website, that's really good because it's got some previous articles of people that have spoken at different events, and also on their YouTube channel as well. You can hear from people who've spoken, so you can find out lots more about lots of different careers. So all that's left to do is to say thank you to you for joining us. At home, I'm assuming you're at home, as well as our panelists who've given up their time for us today, and we really, really appreciate that. So don't get too hot, have a good evening, and yeah, keep up the maths and keep asking questions, being curious and finding out about careers. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.